Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Secrets of the Caribbean, right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm thrilled to welcome Katherine Parker-Magyar. She is a freelance travel writer. She has been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, World Travel Magazine, but to name a few. Thank you so much for your time, Katherine.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love talking all things Caribbean. So excited to be here today.
Yeah, well, you have an absolutely amazing story. I was taking a look at the amount of countries that you have visited and how young you were when you started. Your parents kind of got that travel bug going in you. Why don't we just let the people know where you're from and a little bit about your background and what got you into becoming a travel writer?
Totally. So I was born and raised in New Jersey to two parents who are, you know, they both love to travel. My mom has been to 75 countries or something, so she still beats me. And my sister's been to more, actually. But growing up, you know, my parents are writers, and we would do these crazy cross-country road trips from New Jersey to California and back. We would do that every summer. And I feel like that sort of sparked an interest in me. Just you get a sense, like, I think as a kid, how big the world is, how big even this country is, and just the curiosity for other people and places. But yeah, my parents took me to the Arctic Circle to Alaska when I was like 18 months old or 16 months old. I was toddling around, I was called bear meat. But truly, yeah, the type of travel we did growing up was really, you know, I'm from a family of 6, and we just did a lot of more adventure and cultural travel. And I just have always loved to travel so much because I'm so curious about everything. Like, there's nowhere in the world I don't want to go. On a very primitive level, I want to get off the plane. I want to see what it looks like. I want to get a sense of things. So I'd always loved to travel. And then the other thing I always loved to do was write. And I went to college at Hobart, Williamsburg, upstate New York. I got my honors degree, whatever, in English. And then, like many would-be writer, I worked in advertising for a couple of years, hated it, wasn't very good either. Then I went back to graduate school in the new school where I got a degree in writing. And that, I think, was a big shift for me. I turned 30 and I was just like, I'd gotten the degree and I was like, if I'm not going to try to become a writer now, then I'll never become a writer. So I moved home. I was working on a book. I started freelancing, and, you know, I think the 10,000 hours rule is kind of apt. Like at the beginning, I feel like I was really, you know, I was always hustling a lot. And then it feels, you know, I felt like it almost took off fast though with travel writing. Like within a year, I was, you know, writing my first travel stories and traveling for work. And I think that, you know, from then on, for about 3 years, I was traveling pretty much nonstop. Like, didn't have an apartment anymore. Like, was totally carry-on status. And a lot of people, I think, do that in their early 20s. I'm actually happy I didn't, because like I was in New York for all of my 20s and made the friends and connections and family that I feel like are important and strong enough that I felt like, okay, I can jet around the world for a couple of years and still, you know, have that base. But so I've written for Architectural Digest, Departures Magazine, Forbes, Trip Savvy, The Daily Beast, The Week, Business Insider, a bunch of different publications. I started out actually writing for Brit & Co., which is a more millennial, female-driven publication. And, you know, my advice for people who want to become travel writers or writers is, you know, every assignment you get, like, write your hardest, work your hardest, and don't get, you know, keep pitching, work your way up for sure. But yeah, I focused, my beat was really, you know, my beat was far-flung destinations, you know, off the beaten path. I did a story on like the 10 bucket list trips you should take in the next decade. Like, thank God it was, you know, the 2020s, not just 2020, because nobody could have done any of this. But, you know, and then I wrote about like Peru, Nepal, Kenya, Finland. So I really like covering that type of travel, because I feel like what interests me the most as a person is always sort of new experiences too. And sort of, let me ask you,
I mean, in your, sorry to interrupt, but in your opinion, have you found that travel is changing? It isn't the sort of trips that we used to book, you know, as kids. Most of our parents, they would book these family vacations, or they would book these, you know, resort sort of vacations. Are you finding that there is an increase and a desire now to go off the beaten track, to go where no man has gone before, and to really experience the culture and the places that people are traveling to or wanting to.
Completely. So I know there's a study 2 years ago that was saying like what's motivating travel today. And I'm sure, a lot of people will be disgusted to hear part of that was, Instagram, but Instagram does serve up places that people maybe hadn't considered. But then the other element was cultural immersion. Like people want to explore more. People want to learn. You don't want to just go to the same like all-inclusive resort and never leave the beach, or like, people want new experiences. And urban travel, which is suffering obviously during this pandemic. If you decide to go to London, Paris, and Rome after this, by the way, you're doing like a civic duty because these cities now need it. But a lot of that is also tied in with people, meeting new people. And I've definitely just found that in my experience, there are a lot of people want to go somewhere, but they feel like they don't really know like the first steps towards getting there. Like, okay, I want to go to sub-Saharan Africa. Like, which country do I go to? Like, can be a lot of disillusioning misinformation around some types of travel. Either it's like, oh, well, it's not safe. Usually I found it's quite safe and more affordable than you think. But then I think another perception with travel that I hope is really fading out is that this sort of elitist thing where it's like, can be a snobbery around travel, and this sort of like, oh, well, I've been this kind of place 80 times before, and this is the thing. And I think that travel is such a democratic process because I think it makes you realize you're one of like your humble little place in the world. And I think that it can be really eye-opening. And yeah, people are hungry for those type of experiences. And I think that's going to happen more after the pandemic when people have been self-isolating. And it's really easy to.
That's sort of, I guess, the next question for me is that, because of 2020 and everybody's sort of realizing that they can do their jobs now from home, do you think that once the airlines start opening up again and once travel starts opening up again, that people will start to travel more because they are aware that they can work from wherever it is in the world? Do you think we'll see an uptick in travel as a result?
Completely. I think we're going to see longer trips. Because now even, now as the vaccine's getting disseminated, companies have realized that, they're paying huge overhead for offices that are housing so many people that maybe they don't need to be paying for people to be in the office 5 days a week. So I think you're going to see that more with longer stays. And I mean, as a travel writer, as a freelance writer, the line between my personal and my professional life has always been a little blurred. When you are able to work whenever, it's hard to it's hard to differentiate between work and play. But a flip side of that is that you can do these longer trips and, say you want to go to Panama, rather than being like, okay, I'm able to take 3 days off work. I'm going to go for these 5 days. Or now I think you're going to see people who are like, okay, what's the Wi-Fi connection like? I'm going to be able to stay here maybe for 2 weeks. And that's happening already. And you have hotels and resorts that are already sort of promoting themselves that way. And I think another difference is that people are so used to, I myself, like I wanted to go to Antarctica forever. I was able to go last fall, but then, because of timing, it didn't work out. And now every night, not every night, but I constantly think to myself, when will I get back there? And like, that's an extreme example, but it used to be, okay, if I wanted to go to Paris for a weekend, I can. And there's nothing that makes you want to do something more than restricting it. Yeah. So when that opportunity comes again, I would never have imagined that we would ever be, stuck in our homes with a deadly disease like a plague. I thought the plagues were over with Shakespeare a little bit, but now that we know that anything can sort of happen, this idea of you have the time, you have the moment, don't wait until you've got all your vacation days saved. Don't wait until you've got that perfect amount of money that you think you need to spend, better now than never. So I think that'll be exciting.
Well, I take a look at everything that you've been in. This show is called Inside Secrets of the Caribbean. So we are going to focus a little bit on the Caribbean. And I wouldn't even want to ask you what your favorite vacation, or your favorite discovery spot was, because there are so many of them. And I can imagine each one has its own special niche and its own special, amazing things that would draw you back again. But when it comes to the Caribbean, what for you did you find internally special about the Caribbean?
So I think what draws me the most to the Caribbean, I feel bad because I know I should be calling it the Caribbean, but in Barbados they call it Caribbean. But aside, what I love the most about it is I feel like there's, just as a writer, I'm always looking for the story that's sort of untold, and people know that the Caribbean is beautiful. I think that for me, like I love Alaska. I love the Pacific Northwest, but like I'm happiest when I'm on the water. Like I love to sail, I love to scuba dive, but beyond that, there's so much more to the Caribbean beyond the beaches. And I feel like this is like an older mindset that's informed by partially the cruise industry, maybe. You just stop in a different port, and cruise ports, whether you're in the Caribbean or if you're in Ketchikan, Alaska, they have similar energy, and it's hard to get a sense of the country that you're particularly in. And I view the Caribbean sort of as a floating continent where each nation, there's some shared history, but there's such distinct, unique beauty for each place. And for me, I really think that my favorite part of the Caribbean have been the people that I've met and the relationships I've been able to maintain thanks to our smartphones now. I can WhatsApp, I talked to my driver from Antigua, like, I don't know, earlier this month, and she called me from her friends, and she didn't have a smartphone. She called me from her nephew's iPhone. And being able to have those friendships, and the people are so welcoming. I think the people are usually the place, because you could be in the most amazing place and you feel like you're not really connecting with people, then I feel like you're missing half the point of travel. And there's a way to go to the Caribbean where you're just lying on the beach, or you're just going to sing your frogs, and you're missing out on this whole other element to it, which is, the food. I could eat every variation of conch until I die, but the music that you hear, like throughout, it's just spectacular, the artistry. I think Rihanna and Drake have now brought it to the US, Rihanna, Barbados' queen, but it's like, I feel like I'm always fascinated, like, and, Cardi B is also her family is from the Caribbean. And I think it's so fascinating when you see what drives like popular culture and like music and food, like the food of the US Virgin Islands, like particularly St. Croix is having such a moment. And it's really the people. And, I feel like this is being discussed more now with Black Lives Matter, but the history that I was taught in school, and I got a great education, but it was so Europe centric. Like I know all of Henry VIII's breakups, but I've learned about different entire like races and histories of people in the Caribbean that I never learned in school. Like when I was in, like the Garifuna people came over from West Africa before the slave trade started into the Caribbean. And by the time that, European settlers started arriving, they fled to Central America. So at Belize, I went to the Garifuna Heritage Center. And in Dominica, which is one of my favorite Caribbean islands, a lot of the Caribs, like the indigenous people of the Caribbean, were wiped out when the settlers arrived. And there was an edict, I think it was by Spain in like 1536 or something, where it was like, if you capture a Carib there, you're slave. So in really flat islands of the Caribbean, the indigenous population was really wiped out, like Anguilla or Barbados, which are really flat. But Dominica is so mountainous, and it has like 8 of the Caribbean's 13 active volcanoes. And it's a wildly beautiful place, but it's because of the terrain, the Kalinago people of Dominica were able to survive. So I was able to go to the opening of the Heritage Center with this history that is just so rich and so old. Listening to the speech where it's like, we have survived hurricanes, conquistadors, like, I feel like I'm constantly opening my eyes to different histories, world history I didn't know about. And just, I feel like, there are stereotypes about every place. I love hearing countries give like little, like, oh, Swedes are rude, Danes are drunk, Finns are weird. You know what I mean? Canadians are boring, which I'm sorry, no, Canadian you're not. Right. Americans are loud, which I might support. But going into like in the Caribbean, like there is, like in St. John and St. Thomas, it's like positive is the way I live. It's like the bumper sticker everywhere. And you do feel there's a sense of hard-earned positivity and wisdom that comes from, it can be a brutal history of these islands that some people in their effort to not say the wrong thing, or maybe, I don't think it's a lack of curiosity. Sometimes I think it's like just a lack of even interpersonal knowledge. They don't explore. But, there is like a beautiful history in terms of how, where the countries are today versus where they were 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Some of these island nations, like, I think are truly like within the past 20 years, and also the fact that that these islands have undergone so many different types of phases in terms of, they've had British, Dutch, French, and that all mixed together with local culture, with Afro-Caribbean culture, with West Indian culture. And I think that West African in particular with the food, I think that makes the Caribbean such a wonderful melting pot of influences that provide such a unique flavor, to say for a better word, that you can hear it in the music of Bob Marley. You can feel it when you're eating jerk chicken, and you can see it just with the, some of the gorgeous architecture and some of the wonderful traditions there. So I really love the Caribbean, and I'm all about saying, there's more to the Caribbean than just the beach. And so many reasons. Is there
one secret thing that you experienced that you would tell everybody when they get the chance to go to the Caribbean? This is one thing that you absolutely have to do that not a lot of people know about.
So I would say, and I think that if you do go to the Caribbean regularly, you probably do know, but the fish fry is, I feel like, a must visit, a must do experience. Like people know about Carnival, they know about Junkanoo, they know, the sort of street parades, the festivals. I would always look into that before going, because oftentimes, you can be visiting during a time when there's an amazing live music festival that's going down the street, so you should participate in. But every island, most of them have a tradition of a fish fry, whether it's a Thursday night or a Friday night, where it's just this like amazing mixture of like local crafts, local food, live music, dancing. Oftentimes it's near the beach, which is a good thing about the Caribbean. It's not far from a beautiful ocean sunset, and like find out what day it is and go, because it's such a great way to experience the culture. And also, I mean, everything is right there for you for the taking. But I guess that one of the more hidden things aside from the fish fry would be that there's so much adventure that you can do on each island that, varies. Like Saba, for example, is an island that famously doesn't really have beaches. It's so vertical, huge for diving. But just like referencing St. Lucia, I did some of the most breathtaking hikes I've ever done in my life in St. Lucia. And like, there are a lot of people who will come to the Caribbean from, Switzerland and Germany, those mountain goats, they love to hike, and they're always in Dominica. But I think Americans don't realize that you can have like an active adventure vacation on pretty much every island, because of where it's located too. And then, I mean, diving would be the third thing. The fish fry, the hikes, that like Aruba, I think is like 80% almost part of its national park. Like you can like do these crazy ATV camping under the stars. But I just got my scuba diving license pre-pandemic, and that was always a goal of mine. And I truly feel like I just was exposed to a completely insane underwater world. And that's something in the Caribbean with like the history of the pirates, with the famous turquoise waters, that like it's world class, and you can go diving without your permit if you go on a learner's adventure. So I would definitely like mark in time for diving, fish fry, and just like whether it be ATVing, whether it's going to be hiking, camping, whatever your version of an outdoor experience is, go into the woods out there, like leave the resort. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Well, I mean, if anybody should know, you should know. And it sounds like there are so many things more to do than, and that, I think that is one thing that frustrates me the most, is that when you talk to mainstream people that travel, most of them, for example, the Caribbean is known for the sun, the sand, the sea, and the rum. And there's not much else that people talk about. And that's such a shame, because, they want everything that they have in their home country. They just want it warmer and prettier.
Yeah. I think it's a lazy stereotype. And I also think it's harmful, this idea that if you're going to experience art and culture, you need to go to like Vienna. Yeah. It's Europe, isn't the only place. And I think that even expands beyond the Caribbean, like Mexico, Hawaii have such fascinating cultures and amazing artwork and cool museums. And like, yeah, it's not just because it's in a tropical paradise doesn't mean that the tropical paradise is all there is. And I feel like that's also it makes it so dismissive of the people that live there and the culture that exists there. Because I think some of the reason that there is such amazing culture, I think I think perspective is impacted by landscape. Like, I think if I were born and raised in Hawaii, I would be a much more spiritual person. You know, if I was seeing a humpback whale breach in front of a rainbow every day. And just in that same level, I think that being in more isolated, smaller islands with like, you know, a variety and mixture of people from all over, essentially, you know, you've got people whose heritages are from like West Africa, you have people who are European Americans, and it comes together in such like a wonderful, potent, unique mix in each island. And just because you personally got sunburnt on the beach and got too drunk on mojitos, which is fine, honestly, everyone deserves that probably after this pandemic, just to be like in a beautiful place relaxing. But that doesn't mean that's all there is. And it's not, that's why I mentioned the fish fry, is that people are like, oh, well, it's hard to find, but I don't really think so. I think that like it's pretty easy. And I understand the appeal to all-inclusive resorts if you're traveling with a big family and you're like, I really want to go, but I can't afford to go and like spend every meal out. But there's also a push now, and I think as like also a wave with the Black Lives Matter movement of like, what is locally owned? Like, where are your dollars going to support? And there are like amazing places. I know you hosted someone from St. Lucia who runs like an amazing estate, who lives there. There are places that are locally owned, and like, talk to the people at the hotels about where to go, you know, just put the impetus on yourself a little bit. I also get bored. I like to sail and I like to dive and I like to swim, but I get bored sitting on the beach. So
yeah, well, I'm the same. There's only so much time I could spend at the beach. I want to eat and I want to experience. And for me, it's all about eating, really. Anybody that's ever watched any of my shows, it's all about eating.
Yes. Well, the food culture, like there's this thing called, oh my God, in the Bahamas, it's Nassau Food Tours is what I believe it is called. It is, yeah, Nassau Food Tours. I will actually send this to you so you can make it a note, but it's like, was one of the most fascinating food tours I've ever done, because our host was explaining how like people could tell where their ancestors were from based on specific recipes and dishes. Like, okay, like the usage of like this combination of rice and beans is like maybe from Senegal, and it's really fascinating. And the food, I mean, I love a cocktail. So I've always, you know, my entree into the Caribbean food culture is truly through rum originally. But, you know, the food and like, it's just it's fascinating. And yeah, there is so much more. You can just take it just one step further. You know, if you like conch fritters, go on this food tour and like, you'll discover like so much more beyond that.
Well, it's interesting, you know, food can tell a story unto itself, really, because the flavors of one meal come from a variety of different areas. And I've spoken to other people in the Caribbean about the food there before. And, you know, there's a mixture of Dutch, there's a mixture of African, Senegal, you know, all over the world. And it all comes together on the plate. So I welcome that link, and I will make sure to provide it in this interview.
It's True Bahamian Food Tours. True Bahamian Food Tours. There we go. There we go.
I will make sure to provide that link. And as well, if you could provide us with your links so that if people want to follow you in your travels and see what you're up to once we are able to travel again.
For sure.
Thank you so much. You have been watching Katherine Parker-Magyar. She's a freelance travel writer featured in Forbes, Business Insider, World Travel Magazine, and many more. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. And you can follow me on Instagram at Katherine Parker-Magyar.
Nice. Well, we're going to have you back. We'd love to have you back, and you can let us know what you're up to next.
Thank you. Of course, I would love to. This has been so much fun.
Thanks. You've been watching another edition of Inside Secrets of the Caribbean. My name is Ria. I have been your host. Please tune in again next week for another episode.